husband and I were becoming more distant because of me always being so busy, I never having time, stressed out. I'm like, ugh, just the energy, I could feel it now that I was giving off at that time. He started to pull away from me. But like most busy people, we think we have time, right? So I had what I call as soon as disease, right? As soon as the business gets to a certain level, as soon as we make a certain amount of money, as soon as, world peace, whatever the as soon as is, then we'll have time to spend quality time together and work on our relationship.
Eva Medilek, the founder of Optimize You High Performance Coaching, is a multi-award winning executive leadership trainer, #1 best-selling author, facilitator, renowned international speaker, and successful real estate investor. As a Brendan Burchard certified high performance coach, ICF trained coach, master trainer, and diversity and inclusion communications trainer, Eva offers holistic leadership and inclusive communication coaching programs to individuals, groups, and organizations so they can achieve optimal performance in every area of their lives. With her signature human relationship style assessment, her clients are able to identify what's sabotaging their performance so they can achieve higher levels of personal and professional success. So Eva, let's just jump into it. So about 6 years ago, you had a major wake-up call in your life, and it completely changed your life, both personally and professionally. So can you share with us what that story was and what happened?
Yes, I would be happy to, because I know a lot of people struggle in the same way that I did when you're a high achiever, wanting to be it all and do it all so that you can have it all. And it was a time in my life actually when I had, worked as a dental hygienist in San Francisco. And I got downsized. I was downsized to part-time and my salary reduced. And it really knocked me for a loop because the dentist had just promised me job security and then she pulled the rug out from under me. And so I used that as a catalyst to actually become an entrepreneur and start an entrepreneurial business. And at the time, it was my real estate investment company that I had started. So I had invested oodles and oodles of money into trainings and mentors and advisors to be able to start a business as a real business and build kind of this passive streams of income for me. But at the same time, I was still working as a hygienist. And I just want to add one thing, that when I did this, it was such a huge investment and my husband didn't really support me. He didn't stop me, but he didn't support me. And so I kind of was dragging him along with me, but I did all of the legwork. And like most women, especially busy women, I thought I was Superwoman. So not only was I working my full-time dental hygiene job and taking my classes and my courses and my trainings and building the real estate empire, call it my empire, but I was also doing all the cooking, all the shopping, all the laundry. If someone could say control freak, my picture would be next to it because I just wanted everything to be just right. But
See, I don't look at it as control freak. I look at it as when you were painting this picture of everything that you were doing, I was like, oh my God, she's Superwoman. She's like Wonder Woman.
I had
She
the
can
grace.
do everything.
Yeah. And because I realized after doing a lot of personal development work is because I probably didn't trust anybody to do it the way I would do it and to make sure it was done right and all the things. So after being Superwoman a number of years, it really started to weigh on me. So my health was affected, back and neck pain, actually to the point where they wanted to do neck surgery on me. It was so bad. My well-being, when you're so overwhelmed and stressed and exhausted, it affects your mood, right?
Yeah.
And how you show up. So I was a little bit impatient, short, cranky, whatever adjective you want to give to that. And then finally, what I realized in my relationship, and my husband and I were becoming more distant because of me always being so busy, I never having time, stressed out. I'm like, ugh, just the energy. I could feel it now that I was giving off at that time. He started to pull away from me. But, like most busy people, we think we have time, right? So I had what I call as soon as disease, right? As soon as the business gets to a certain level, as soon as we make a certain amount of money, as soon as, world peace, whatever the as soon as
Right.
is, then we'll have time to spend quality time together and work on our relationship. But as soon as literally came for me in the form of discovering his infidelity. And it was quite a punch in the gut. And it really honestly had me thinking what my part was in it. Because of all the work that I had done in the personal development space, I looked at it as wow, I'm sharing in this responsibility. The way I was showing up in a way, not that I made him do it or caused him to do it. That's just the path he chose to deal with what he was experiencing. And so we had to make a decision as to how we would move forward or if we would move forward. And I'll be honest with you, Suzanne, I found out by searching for something on his phone that had to do with one of our real estate deals. And, as a lot of women have, they either come across text messages or photos or something that reveal that. And sometimes it takes a life-changing event for us to change our lives. And that was the life-changing event for me. And what he and I did when we discussed it, and I'm always proud of how we were able to sit down and discuss it, because we have this little dog who was able to curl up between us and take a nap while we were discussing my discovery, which meant that tempers and yelling and all of that stuff didn't happen, but we really sat down and talked about it. And I got advice from a coach that I was working with for us to see a therapist. And we did therapy, and I hired a relationship coach. And that's when I went into high performance coaching as well. Got my high performance coach, and the journey that we took to literally, Suzanne, we built a better relationship after the infidelity than we had before it, was what inspired me and my husband's encouragement to help other people who are high achieving, but also burnt out and stressed out and overwhelmed, where it's impacting their health and their well-being and their relationships, to move from high achieving to high performing. And that's the distinction. I know you may have a lot of listeners and viewers are like, well, what's the difference? High performance, high achieving, we're just aiming high, right?
Right.
But high achievers are not, usually don't have that harmony with their health and their well-being and their relationships. They're usually sacrificing something to achieve something else. And so what I love about high performance coaching is really we can have success in all of those areas and be high performing in all of those areas.
And finding balance in your personal life and your professional life, right? Because with the picture that you painted at the beginning was, I saw a lot of imbalance, that you were doing all this stuff in your professional life, but then things in your personal life were suffering. So it was almost like this disconnect, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I would say my priorities were messed up. My priorities, because I really don't believe that you can have work-life balance, because balance is not equal. Because when you look at a scale that's perfectly balanced, that number reads 0. And so you're really there's no way that we can do equal time to each. So I think the perception of balance is what we're talking about. And so I needed to learn how to prioritize my health, my well-being, and my relationships, because that's what I was working for. I was working for us to be able to have kind of the future we desired together, but I was sacrificing the possibility of that future because I was working. So I put too much priority. I didn't know how to prioritize in a way that I could show up as my best self to all
Right.
the areas that were important to me. So yeah, the layman's term, if you will, would be like work-life balance. But what helps people visualize, I think, better in the work that I do is really how to prioritize, because there are still times where I need to prioritize work over something else, but I communicate that better now. And then there's times when I'm prioritizing, my family. My family's always a priority, but I'm talking about where I give my time to.
Yeah.
And, and I make space in my work life to give time to priorities. Like, you and I talked before we started recording. My dad, who's 92, is visiting from New Jersey. So my work week looks vastly different when he's here,
Yeah.
because I build in time to be able to give him the attention that he needs, because he's got a bit of dementia. And so I have that freedom to prioritize what matters most to me in the moment. What's a priority for me in the moment? And I think I didn't have that skill back then, because everything felt important, everything felt urgent, everything needed me to do all the time. And so even delegating and really looking like, how important is this task to be done right
Yeah.
now? Right. So that helped.
So this is interesting because you said my priorities were all messed up, right? And um it and, like, I was thinking about my own life, and as you know, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I shared with you that it was my wake-up call. It was. And when it happened at the time, it was like, "Oh god, this is the worst thing that could happen." But now that I've gone further on this journey, I realize that it was the best thing that could have happened to me. And I know people think that's crazy, but I'm in a really good place. And the reason why I say that is because it made me wake up and figure out where, why am I prioritizing work and my business over everything else in my personal life? And like you said, later on when I achieve whatever, or it gets to this point, then I'll make some time. And it's like, this made me prioritize my personal life. And so my question for you is, would you say that this wake up call, now that you've distanced yourself and you're in a better place with your husband and your business, would you say that it was a good thing because it made you wake up and reprioritize your life and change things, and now you feel like you guys are in a better place?
I think it's the best thing that ever happened for us. It happened for us. It really happened
Yeah.
for us. I don't know where we would be if I didn't discover what I discovered. Um, I may have still been on that path, thinking everything would work out, because, if you ask me or anybody else that knows my husband, he is the most integrous guy I've ever known.
Mhm.
So it was a shock to anyone, to know that this happened, and it was him. I mean, if
Yeah.
you told me that I would grow a third eye, or my husband would cheat on me, I would be like, "Oh, I've got to get like a third set of eyelashes for." I would really seriously. I'm like, "Okay, I've got to spend a little bit more time getting my eyelash extensions put on now because I have three eyes."
You're so
Literally, he
funny.
was that last person on earth you would expect. That. That's why I think when I discovered it, my first thought was, "Wow, you know, I really thought, what kind of bitch must I have been that he thought this was his only choice. This is what he had to do." And I
Yeah.
really started looking at my role and my responsibility. Now, it doesn't mean I was hurt, that I wasn't hurt and that I wasn't pissed off and that I wasn't angry. So I don't want people to think that, number one, that I took all the responsibility or that even I was a victim. I think we both were hurting in a way and we weren't skilled enough to know how to deal with the hurt. So we made bad choices.
Yeah. It's interesting because you and I both went through the same leadership
Yeah.
program. I know you've done more leadership than that, but I can always tell when someone's gone through a leadership program because they always take responsibility in whatever situation it is for whatever their part was, and not sitting there and playing the blame game, but figuring out, okay, this is my part, this is your part. Now, how can we fix this? And so, I commend you for that. So, because I know a lot of people would just point the finger and go, "Oh, it's all his fault." Well, it's not all his fault, right? He made
And,
a poor
and
choice.
infidelity a lot of times is a deal breaker for people. You
Well, I
know,
full disclosure, it was for me. And so, everybody's different. And
every
I just knew
situation is different.
myself that I couldn't continue with the relationship. And for you, it was different. And there's no right or wrong. It's whatever works for both of you, right? So,
You know what's interesting is it a lot of these things can be a deal breaker, whether it's infidelity, alcoholism, drug abuse, emotional
yeah.
abuse, verbal abuse. I lump them all in the same category of hurting people and hurting themselves in the process. But we both had to be willing to do the work to get to the other side. And I remember talking to my coach a lot about this, like being worried that in the process of doing the work, what if he realized he didn't want to be with me?
Yeah.
That was the fear. That was the fear, like not knowing, okay, we're going to do all of this work as a couple. We're going to do all of this work on ourselves individually. And what if we discover that the relationship we desire and deserve is not with this person?
Excuse me. I'm I'm about to cough. I'm trying to stop. But
Yeah.
it's really interesting that you say that because that is scary, right? To step into that and go, "Oh God, I don't know." But the truth is that, you know, you would never want to get to the place like if you ended it right then and you didn't try, maybe 5 years, 6 years later, you would be saying, God, what if we actually tried to work on it? And what if we found out it still wasn't right? At least you would know
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
certain that, you know what, we really tried. This isn't going to work, but I'm glad we gave it our all. And we can both leave this marriage feeling like, you know what, it's
We
time
gave
to
it our
part
best shot.
ways.
And that's how
Yeah.
I left my first marriage. So there you go. So I've been down that path
And
before.
you were for sure
I was
positive that that
sure
was the
that,
right
yeah,
choice.
that I was making that, but we did try. But the interesting thing that kept me out of the anxiety over what the future would hold for us was really staying present, was
Yeah.
really taking it one day at a time because it was hard. I'm not going to lie and say it was easy. I was, didn't want a second failed marriage. I, my ego was hurt that, you know, it's like, wow, who would cheat on me? I'm like fucking amazing, right?
Well, you are. I have to agree with
Like,
that.
what is wrong with that person? And so it was incredibly humbling as well, but also staying present and taking it one day at a time, I think helped me through that fear and anxiety that I was experiencing as we were going through the messy parts and the messy
Yeah.
pieces and hearing what came up in our joint therapy sessions together was very hard to hear and take in, and but really staying present and focused on the relationship without, and this was the interesting piece for me, at least I can only speak for myself, not being having the relationship I wanted attached to the person. That helped me a lot because people will make mistakes, right? People will disappoint us, people will fail us, but being focused on the goal of the relationship is what helped me stay present, even though there were times I wanted to wring his neck, and I'm sure he wanted to wring mine, and I was disappointed in how he reacted. I had different expectations, like all of the things that any normal human beings would go through. But staying focused on the goal of the relationship that I wanted and I valued. And I would assume the same for him. But that helped me personally calm my anxieties and my fears about what if it's not with this person I want it to be, I would like it to be. But what's more important is for me to be the type of person that will manifest the type of relationship that I want, need, and desire. And so, yeah, it was a lot of stuff. It was a lot of mess to get through, but I'm really proud of the fact that we didn't give up on each other. And it's interesting. You'd appreciate this story. I was actually coaching a client who called himself a serial cheater. And this is after me going through that. And he asked me a question that I really couldn't answer because I'm not a man. And I asked him, I said, do you mind if he asked me why my husband stayed with me after he cheated. And I was like, I don't think I can answer that question. And I remember saying that I would check with him and I'd get back to my client. And I asked my husband, I was like, why do you think you stayed? Like, help me understand that, because I don't even know if I wanted to know the answer. But one of the things he said to me, which really hit, and there were a few others, but the one that stood out, he said, I never had anybody in my life stand up for me and fight for what's best for me, like the better part of who I am, right? Believed in my greatness, right? In my life.
Wow. That is so powerful. And that is huge. And gosh, that just got me so choked up. I was like, "Oh
Mhm.
my god." And he realized how worth it you are and how important you are in the marriage is to him. And
But
so
what he
he taught
also realized was how important he is.
yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. You guys had a lot of growth in this whole experience
Oh, yeah.
of
Yeah.
something that could have turned out tragic and horrible, but you guys used it and turned your marriage into something even better. And I'm sure you guys communicate so much better now.
Well, well, yes,
It's
we
a
do.
work in progress.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, but it's funny because we have two vastly different cultural backgrounds.
Right.
And so there's that to navigate in our communication process. But what I will say is we have a lot more patience in getting to an understanding than we
Well,
had in the
that's what
past.
counts. Well, see, I love that you shared that because some
Yeah,
people might say, "Oh, yeah, it's perfect," right? And you're just being honest.
yeah,
So
no,
I
it's super
appreciate
real.
that.
Mhm.
So, Eva, what would you say are 3 key things that you learned from this experience that you're just so grateful for?
One of the things, and I incorporate this into my coaching, is I developed a relationship style assessment quiz that my clients that I have my clients take to see where those habits and patterns and belief systems come from our early life experiences and how they can sabotage how we show up in our adult life. And so, what I learned about myself was that I have high expectations for myself and for others. And when those expectations aren't met, I get very disappointed. It's like being high and then crashing. And
Right.
that disappointment causes me to withdraw and pull back and it puts kind of a protective barrier up so that I don't get hurt. And so what I've learned is to love what is, and to meet people where they're at, and to really manage my expectations, because my expectations will constantly have me being disappointed. And so that was a huge learning session for me. I've also learned to listen more, really listen and make sure I understand what the person is saying because of our cultural differences. I always check in to make sure I heard the person correctly. I heard my husband correctly. Like, all right, let me just make sure that this is what you're saying and I'm hearing you correctly. And so that's number two. And the third thing is I ask more questions to get a better understanding. I get curious before I get furious, if you will. And my default was always furious and get mad and make a lot of assumptions. And so I've learned to ask a lot of questions to make sure that I understand the person's thought process without assuming I know everything. So really, it's to manage my expectations, to listen, and to be curious.
Oh, I love all the three things that you learned. And I have to commend you, Eva, for using this story not only to share with others so that they can learn from your experience, because I firsthand know it's not easy to share that story. So I appreciate that, your honesty and your vulnerability. So Eva, how can people find you?
Well, I'm on all social media, just using my name, Eva Medilek, and my website is also simple, evamedilek.com. That's how people can find me. Yeah.